In a shocking turn of events, the US government has passed a law that's left the EV industry in shock. Automobile companies are certainly not happy with the new direction the government is taking and have actually advised the administration otherwise. Just what new regulations did the government pass, and how will it affect the future of the EV industry? Let's find out. In April of 2023, the US Energy Department proposed a new plan to reduce EV mileage ratings to meet the government's fuel economy requirements. The news has left the EV world in shock, as many predict that the move will only force automakers to sell more low-emission cars. As for why the DOE would make this decision, well, the US Department is planning to make significant changes to how it calculates the fuel economy rating in petroleum equivalent for plug-in electric and electric hybrids, which will be utilized in the Corporate Average Fuel Economy Program, or CAFE, of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. The current model has been around for more than 2 decades, and it's in desperate need of an update. The DOE further added that encouraging EV adoption by the masses can reduce petroleum consumption, but it can have an undesirable opposite effect as well. The DOE thinks that awarding the masses for the switch to EVs could also lead to increased net petroleum because of the lower fuel economy amongst traditional internal combustion engine vehicles, which are at the moment the greatest majority of vehicles sold. To put it simply, the higher-ups want to change the way we grade EVs so that we can go easy on the gas. Of course, the question arises, how do they rate the fuel economy at this moment? Well, the DOE uses something called miles per gallon equivalent. The value depends on many factors including national electricity, petroleum generation, and distribution efficiency, or to put it in easier terms, how much gas a vehicle uses and how people use the car. With this new law, EVs would have to travel fewer miles on a single charge, bringing down the total mileage. Of course, such a change could significantly alter the efficiency and productivity of an EV. With long drives interrupted by more and more charging breaks, drivers would have plenty to complain about. That said, the policy is shocking to say the least, especially since the government has always favored EV automakers. As the automotive industry ushers into a new era of electrification, governments around the world have changed their policies to help promote and facilitate this strategy. By offering lucrative incentives, policymakers have made it easier for automakers to thrive in a changing market. Governments even introduced tax incentives for people who bought EVs, thereby inviting people to make the switch from internal combustion engines, with some even offering $7,500 for buying new EVs. On that note, people who buy used cars are eligible for a credit of $4,000. More recently, the Biden administration proposed a new tailpipe emission limits that can mandate 67% of all new vehicles sold in the country by 2032 to be all electric. This figure is an improvement from Biden's previous 50% commitment. The US Protection Agency is not necessarily asking for a specific number of annual EV sales, but instead settling the limit for emissions by cars and trucks, forcing automakers to make a switch to EVs to meet government demands. That said, one might question what prompted the sudden shift in tone on the government's part. Well, environmental groups from around the world might have something to do with it. Climate activists from across the world have rallied together to speak out against the way electric vehicles' fuel economy rates are determined. In their eyes, the current system grades EVs as more efficient than they actually are. Of course, as people raise their voices on one side, there are parties with opposing opinions on the other side as well. The Sierra Club and National Resources Defense Council have been protesting for a change as far as 2021, supporting their claims with the argument that excessively high imputed fuel economy values for EV would also mean a small number of EVs will mathematically guarantee compliance without meaningful improvements in the real-world average fuel economy of automakers' overall fleets. The Alliance for Automotive Initiation is strictly against the change concerning fuel economy ratings, with leading automakers even warning the DOE that lowering the values could have devastating consequences on the industry as a whole, perhaps even discouraging EV adoption. However, what's surprising is that Tesla backed the environmentalists on this one. And so, the Environmental Protection Agency will be proposing new rules for emission cuts for vehicles and forcing automakers to focus on EV sales. With these pollution cuts, the US might actually have half its vehicle fleets replaced by electric or plug-in hybrids by 2030, as detailed in Biden's plan. As for how the new rules will be implemented, that remains up in the air. The Alliance for Automotive Initiation pointed out that the way things are going, a Volkswagen ID.4 EV that's currently rated at 380.6 mpge could get an even lower rating to 107.4 in the future. The same goes for the Ford F-150 EV. It can go from an MPG rating of 2,371.1 to 67.1. That said, the NHTSA will be implementing the new CAFE requirements soon enough. Automakers found not following the requirements will be fined accordingly. Still, aliens have to pay a total of $152.3 million back in 2016 and in 2017 for violating CAFE rules. Over the years, the NHTSA has only grown more uncompromising in trying to get automobiles to follow the new rules, with the organization even doubling the penalties in 2022. Many suspect that the new CAFE requirements could be the government's way of trying to adapt the shifting market. The shift to EVs is not merely about putting more cars on the road. The government would also have to be trying to take measures to expand the infrastructure accordingly. For example, expanding the electrical grid and establishing more charging stations. The change in CAFE requirements is merely the first of many. Oddly enough, this is something that has been talked about in the industry for a very long time now. Back in 2021, Tesla picked a fight with NHTSA and the rest of the automobile world over CAFE requirements proposed in 2016. Back then, the Obama administration doubled up the penalties, but Trump froze the order before leaving office, leaving Biden in charge to deal with the mass. As the issue made rounds in government meetings, Tesla supposedly met with the NHTSA when rumors about the agency revising the penalties started picking up. Surprisingly, according to Reuter's report, Tesla pushed for the government to reinstate the penalties. Meanwhile, automotive names like Ford, GM, Toyota, and Volkswagen were on the other side of the argument. While Tesla had no problem meeting CAFE's requirements and even making a profit by selling credits to automobile companies that can't meet government requirements, the likes of GM, Volkswagen, and Toyota would have been liable to pay fines for models going back to 2019. That would mean the loss of billions of dollars. Needless to say that the CAFE requirements directly affect the performance of automobile industries, with studies proving that stringent CAFE requirements lead to an improvement in vehicle quality. That said, the current Biden administration have been more active than ever considering EV regulations. In the latest update to the advance of Biden's climate agenda, the Environmental Protection Agency announced its strictest emission restrictions to date. With these new rules, the president's goal to make 67% of all vehicle sales electric by 2032 becomes more achievable. The rules will apply to everything from passenger cars to big trucks and will once again push automobile companies to make no-emission vehicles a bigger part of their catalog. Speaking about the EPA announcement, agency administrator Michael Regan said that the stakes couldn't be higher, and that we all must continue to act with haste and ambition to confront the climate crisis and to leave all of our children a healthier and safer world. However, as the US government prepares to revamp the automotive industry, policymakers need to think about the other side of the coin, like how amping up the scale of EV manufacturers would also call for more battery production lines that come with their own environmental concerns. The manufacturing of lithium-ion batteries require the mining of rare earth materials, and not to mention the sustainable greenhouse gas emissions that need to be taken into account as well. Still, the government is seeing an increase in EV purchases amongst consumers. In January, electric vehicles made up to 7% of vehicle registrations in the States, which has significantly improved from the 4% last year. That being said, the question about how these new CAFE requirements and emission regulations could affect EV productions and purchases remain to be seen. These changes would require EV automakers to significantly revise their EV strategies for the coming years. Will they manage to adapt or not? Until next time.